Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This week's video I'm going to be doing my August reading wrap up. I just figured I would jump in quick, talk about the books I read this month, and talk about my readings. So let's jump right in. So the first book that I read this month was Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas. This is the last book in the Throne of Glass series, and I rated this book 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. It was like the perfect wrap up to the series itself, and I just had such a great time reading the series as a whole. I definitely recommend checking this out. And I just love the characters so much. Like I said, Sarah J. Maas genuinely just knows how to write characters, and I can't give too much away about the plot because obviously it's a bunch of spoilers since it's literally the last book in the series. So just know it's amazing. Definitely read Throne of Glass. In Throne of Glass, you're following your main character, Selena Sardathian, who is an assassin, and she ends up being in End of Year, which is like a slave facility camp, and then she ends up getting freed for this competition that the prince wants her to participate in, to fight to be the king of Adarlan's champion. So that's what like the first book follows, is you're following her journey as trying to become the king's champion. So definitely loved it. Again, 5 stars. So the next book I actually have it linked out to my stepmom is The Love Hypothesis by Ellie Hazelwood. I also gave this book 5 stars. I don't know what took me so long to read it, but it was so freaking good. You're following Olive and Adam. Olive is a grad student and Adam is a professor there at the college. And you're pretty much, it's like a fake dating trope. Olive actually ends up kissing Professor Carlson. Well, I think it's Dr. Carlson. Because she's like trying to cover up the fact that like she's like over this guy, but her like best friend doesn't like really think that she's over this guy, but her best friend wants to date this guy, but like she's obviously trying to be a good friend, and she like doesn't want Olive to be upset. So in order to show her best friend that she is in fact over this guy, she just like randomly walks up to Adam and just kisses him. And so then you like go into this whole like deep dive, and they like develop this like fake dating relationship, and it is genuinely so good. Adam and Olive's relationship is hilarious, and I just loved reading about them. I definitely understand why it gets so much hype. The banter, the just the 2 main characters themselves and like how they interact, and I just loved honestly having like that like the fact that they were like both super intelligent and that they just like got each other, and I just like absolutely loved that. And like the more you learn about Adam, like the more you absolutely fall in love with him. And so I was super happy that I picked that book up, and I, again, 5 stars, absolutely loved it, and I can't wait to dive more into Ellie Hazelwood's books. So next up, I listened to the Honeymoon Crashers by Christina Lauren. This was an audiobook exclusive by them. And it follows characters from The Unhoneymooners by her, and The Unhoneymooners was one of my favorite books, like literally ever. Like I genuinely cannot wait to reread that book, but I don't want to give too much about it away because then it can kind of spoil some things that happen in The Unhoneymooners, which I know that book's been out a while, but you just never know, so I don't want to spoil anything about it. But you're following a character from that book, and it was hilarious. I loved listening to it on audio. It was such a fun time. I rated it 4 stars. If you haven't read The Unhoneymooners, I definitely suggest reading that book and then definitely listening to The Honeymoon Crashers. I feel like it was just like a nice like wrap up to that book, while also like kind of giving this character like their own story and everything as well. So absolutely loved it. And then next up I read Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. I loved this book. I gave this book 5 stars. It's a standalone fantasy book, and I loved the characters in this book so much. You're following Elizabeth, and she pretty much grows up in one of the great libraries, and the books are like magical. It's kind of like in Harry Potter when there's that one book that Hagrid picks for class, and it moves and chomps and like talks and like all these things, and that's like what all the books are like, the grimoires. And there's like different levels to these grimoires about like how dangerous they are, and just overall such a good book. Like I loved just being in that library setting, a lot of it, and the romance, you guys, the romance between Elizabeth and Nathaniel, chef's kiss. It was to die for. I absolutely ate it up. Again, I rated this book 5 stars. It was just such a good time. It gave me like very cozy fantasy vibes while also still having the elements of like just like a really good like standalone fantasy book. But there's no like big wars or like anything like that. Like again, I feel like it's just like a very like kind of low key, like you're in a library. They're obviously dealing with a conflict. I will read the back of the book to you because I don't really know it's spoilers and I hate spoiling things in fantasy books. So Elizabeth has known that as long as she has known anything, raised as a foundling in one of Ostermere's great libraries, Elizabeth has grown up among magical grimoires that rattle beneath iron chains, capable of transforming into grotesque monsters. When an act of sabotage releases the library's most dangerous grimoire, Elizabeth is accused of treason. With no one to trust her but her sworn enemy, the sorcerer Nathaniel Thorn, and his mysterious servant, she finds herself entangled in a centuries-old conspiracy. Not only could the great libraries go up in flames, but the world along with them. Please read this book. Please read this book. It is so good. The 3 characters, the Nathaniel, Elizabeth, and then how do they describe it? His mysterious servant. So good. Absolutely loved it. Ate this book up. Please read this book. And then after that, I read Mysteries of Thorn Manor, again by Margaret Rogerson. Now, I know I just said this is a standalone. So this Mysteries of Thorn Manor is more like a novella. It was, I think, like 150 pages. And you're just kind of following Elizabeth after the events in this book, just for like a little, just to kind of see where they're at. It's like a kind of just a long epilogue. But they are dealing with a couple of things in that book as well. And so again, I really don't want to go too much into it because I don't want to spoil anything. But again, you're just following Elizabeth through this journey after the events in Sorcery of Thorns. And again, I absolutely loved it. I gave it 4 stars. Had such a good time reading that. Next up is this bad boy. Finally, I read A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. I honestly listened to it. I did not read it. But it's so good. 5 stars. This is the 5th book in the ACOTAR series. So again, can't go too much into it. But in this book, you're following one of Feyre's sisters, Nesta, and her journey. And at the beginning, she's a very unlikable character, like extremely unlikable, to the point where I'm pretty sure that the first time I read this, I ended up doing like a soft DNF and being like, I don't want to read this right now because I literally could not stand her. But my mom read it. She absolutely loved it. You know, a lot of people have absolutely loved this book and have loved Nesta's character development. So I was here for it. I was like, you know what, let me jump into it. I had the time to like listen to the audiobook, and just like kind of immerse myself in it. And so that is what I did. And again, I absolutely adored it. And I just love the character. I just love being back in the ACOTAR world so much and like being around the inner circle. And again, can't say too much, don't want to give too much away, but you're just following the ACOTAR characters in another setting, trying to continue to obviously solve the issue that they've been trying to solve since the beginning. So loved it. Very excited to see what she writes next in this world, and I'm very glad that I ended up picking it up. Again, 5 stars. That I picked up Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. So I annotated the crap out of this book, and I absolutely adored this book. I did only give it a 4 stars, which I go into depth about my review and rating of this book in my video I posted last week about if Bookstagram hype books are worth the hype. And so definitely go check that video out if you want like my in-depth like review of the book. But just an overall review, I liked it. I really like the characters. You're essentially following Sadie and Sam, who are 2 friends that meet when they are younger, and you're literally following them from the time they're younger all the way up until they're like in their 30s. I think they're like, or late 30s. And so you're just following them. They create video games together, and you're just literally following their journey, their ups and their downs, the things that they go through. You get introduced to some really great side characters like Marks, who ends up being Sam's roommate in college. And, you know, you just get to meet all these great characters, this great character development. And my favorite character in this book was Sam. I felt like he was super relatable to me. And I found Sadie's character a little annoying, but That's Just Me. Kind of just talks a lot about friendships, relationships, and it was really, really good. I definitely recommend reading it. I loved the video game aspect of it, and my husband's a huge gamer, and my dad's into games, my brother's into games, you know, a lot of fun to really like read about it and be able to like understand what they're like, relate to what they're saying about these games. And it was just really, really good. And like, and I just loved, I'm a very character driven person, so I think that's why I like this book so much, is because it's a character study. So while there's not a whole heck of a lot happening at every point in time, you just are learning a lot about these characters, and that to me was what made the story great. Definitely recommend checking this book out. I read The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I gave this book a 4 stars. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. It is essentially a YA Criminal Minds. In this book, you're following a 17-year-old Cassie, and she gets brought into this group of kids that have these like natural abilities. Like, Cassie is really good at reading people, and then you have Michael, who's really good at like reading people's emotions, and then there's Sloan, who's like really good at numbers and like looking at patterns, and then there's Leah, who can tell when someone's lying, and then she's really good at lying, and Dean, who is like Cassie and is really like pretty much like a behavioral analysis. He can read people very well. So essentially it's literally just like a YA Criminal Minds, and I absolutely love this book. Again, 4 stars. I'll read the back to you guys. It's a Jennifer Lynn Barnes book, so it's very fast-paced, very short chapters. The characters are really well written, and like I said, it's just super fast-paced. And I have the other 4 books in the series, or the other 3 books, sorry. So there's The Naturals, Killer Instinct, All In and Bad Blood, 4-book series. Everyone and their mother is reading this book right now, and everyone's been loving it. I don't think I've heard like a single person say that they didn't like it. And everyone pretty much says that once you start it, like, you can't stop it. So that's why I have the rest of the books in the series. So on the back it says, 17-year-old Cassie Hobbs is natural at reading people. Piecing together the tiniest details, she can tell you who you are and what you want. But it's not a skill that she's ever taken seriously. That is, until the FBI comes knocking. They've begun a classified program that uses exceptional teenagers to crack infamous cold cases, and they need Cassie. What Cassie doesn't realize is that there's more at risk than a few unsolved homicides, especially when she's sent to live with a group of teens whose gifts are as unusual as her own. And so you're following her, helping them solve cold cases, like the team as a whole, but it also kind of, there's like this overarching mystery that you're going to be following, I'm assuming, through all 4 books, which again is very like just Criminal Minds, because every single episode there's like a smaller case that they're working on, but there's always that overarching case or mystery that they're like trying to solve over like a season or like, you know, a certain length of episodes. And that's exactly what this gives, because they're solving and working on this like one case, but it kind of relates to the bigger case, but obviously then the bigger case isn't solved, and so it's really, really good. I love Criminal Minds, so I love this book so much, and I'm very excited to continue the series. So then next I listened to Things We Hide from the Light by Lucy Score, and I rated that book 3.75 stars. It is the 2nd book in the Knock 'Em Out series, where you're following Knox's brother Nash and Lena. You really do learn to love Nash, and he's a lot deeper than you initially think, and so it was really, really good. I really enjoyed it. I know my mom really liked it. I think she listened to it as well, and we're both very excited for the book that is getting released in, I think, 2 days, which, yay for that, the 3rd book in that series, so cannot wait for that. You're following Nash and Lena, and you're also still following the overarching mystery plot that carries over from the first one, which is honestly why I like the Knock 'Em Out series, because even though, yes, they are long, they are like lengthy books, it's not just a romance. Like, there's a lot of other things that are going on in this series, so you're still working to solve that. And like I said, I really did just enjoy their story. I wouldn't say they're necessarily enemies to lovers, but I wouldn't necessarily say that they're friends to lovers. They're kind of this weird thing in between, where it's like very interesting. So, and it's like little forced proximity. There's a bunch of good tropes in there. The small town, so you get to see all these characters from the first book back in there, which is why I'm also excited to jump into the third book. So then next up, I listened to Flawless by Elsie Silver. This is the first book in the Chestnut Springs series, and you are following Rhett and Summer, and this is an enemies to lovers. As you guys know, that's just like kind of my thing. So in this book, you're following Rhett, who is a bull rider, a professional bull rider, and he ends up running into some issues with his image. And so Summer, who is Rhett's PR company's daughter of the PR company, his daughter is Summer. So the dad puts the daughter in charge of watching Rhett. So those two are off in Chestnut Springs and traveling around to all these bull riding shows. And Summer's literally there to like babysit Rhett to make sure that he doesn't do anything stupid. And so you're getting that aspect of, you know, forced proximity, the enemies to lovers vibe. Even though like they're both super nice people, they just are like overall annoyed. He's annoyed with the situation. He's like, oh, why do I need a babysitter? It's like, But, so yeah, so I rated this book 4 stars. I loved the banter so much. It was so cute, so funny. I liked the bull riding aspect, and again, like the small town, and I am so excited to continue this series because I absolutely adored all the other characters. Like there's, so Rhett has a big family of brothers and friends, and so I'm just excited because I know there's other books in the series that follow these different characters, and so I'm very, very excited to continue reading it. So again, yes, I rated that 4 stars, and I definitely recommend checking that out, and I'm super excited to just dive further into that series as well. And then the last book that I read for the month is Vicious by V.E. Schwab. So I actually lent this book to my dad because he wants to check it out. So in this book, you are following your 2 main characters, Victor and Eli. So this book is hard to explain. So essentially what you're following is Victor and Eli are in college, and they are working on 2 separate theses. I don't know. They're each working on a thesis for their grad project. And Eli is working on one for EOs, and Victor is working on one for how adrenaline affects, like, you know, fight or flight, things like that. So now EOs are extraordinaries, and EOs are people that have developed extraordinary abilities. And so then you are kind of diving a little bit further into how then Eli stumbles across like a really big breakthrough about how EOs are essentially made, and so then him and Victor kind of decide to dive a little bit further into that, and then Victor decides that he wants to, instead of making it theoretical, he wants to take it and make it experimental and see if they can create extraordinaries. So it was genuinely one of the most interesting books I've read. I am not even gonna lie. I've never read a book following this premise, because like I said, they're literally creating like superheroes essentially, and then things go off the rails, obviously, and then you kind of get more of like a hero versus villain story. And and I love the writing. V.E. Schwab's writing is immaculate. I never felt bored. I always felt like I was just being pushed through the story. I felt like I got everyone's POV, and I felt like I just understood all the characters so well. I ended up giving this book 4.5 stars, and I have literally not stopped thinking about this book. So I don't know, maybe I'll bump it up to a 5-star, but it was just so good. And if you like anything that's like kind of like X-Men inspired, like I think that's what a lot of people say that this book is like, even though I know the X-Men are like born with like an extra mutation. It's like kind of that aspect of they all have like these individual abilities and things like that that make them special. And it was just so good. Like I just love learning about all the different characters that get brought in, and like I said, the timelines are interesting because you're going back and forth between POVs, but you're also going back and forth between timelines. So like the book starts and it's like 2 weeks ago, and then it'll say 2 years ago in like at Lockland University, which is their college, and then it'll say like 2 weeks ago at Merritt University, and like so it goes back and forth, it jumps around, but I was never confused. I always knew where we were, always knew what timeline we were in, always knew what characters we were following, and I ate it up. It was so freaking good. Anyone and everyone should read this book if you like the kind of, like I said, super, like I'm super into like Marvel movies and stuff like that, and I ate this book up. So I read 11 books this month. Like I said, it was kind of a mix of like audio and physical reading. But I had such a good time this month with all these books. I don't think there was really a book that I didn't like, which is always fun. So please let me know down below, what books did you read this month? I'm interested to know if you've read any of these books, or if you're interested in reading any of these books. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, I will catch you in the next video.